The fourth choice I made, because this rolls right in there, is to create community and belonging. When I was in my 30s, I had created more professional success than I ever thought imaginable. I was like, whoa. But when I looked around, I realized that I was friendly with everyone. I was friends with no one. I didn't belong, and I wanted to. Was there ever a time that you felt like you didn't belong?
Well, yes. So growing up in Britain in the 70s and 80s, in a society that was still, relatively segregated to some extent, where you weren't considered British unless you were, frankly, white.
Mm.
And so my father being from Pakistan, my mother from Trinidad, um, living in Britain, raising me, you had all kinds of dynamics going on there. So you had the dynamic of not being considered British. I also had the additional dynamic of not necessarily fitting in with either the Pakistani community, because I didn't speak Urdu, which is the language of Pakistan, or the Trinidadian community. So I was sort of in this area of not really belonging to any community. And and it's something I've been very cognizant of growing up. And then when I came to the United States as well, which is a melting pot, you meet people from all kinds of backgrounds and all kinds of different various ethnic backgrounds that have intermingled, and so you gravitate to people that have similar dispositions, and so there's almost like communities that you build with individuals that either that have just different diverse experiences. There's this great movie. It was a few years ago. It's called Blinded by the Light, and it's about a kid in Britain of Pakistani parents growing up in Britain, born in Britain, and who becomes obsessed with Bruce Springsteen. That's not me, by the way. I wasn't obsessed with Bruce
No,
Springsteen,
you're
but
a big Beatles fan.
Beatles. That's thank my parents for that. The
That's right.
Beatles were a big band when they first came to the UK. But this movie was about this kid and this um, juxtaposition of not being white but growing up in Britain, and yet having a parents with traditional backgrounds, and that tension, and it's about that experience, but it's also about Britain at that time, which was, you saw in this movie what it was like, and it was challenging, and I remember experiences like that growing up. So that builds resilience, but it also builds this recognition that you may not necessarily fit into a neat little category or a neat little community, but that's okay, because there are others that feel exactly the same, and so you tend to find them, and then you create community in that way.
So you gave us both sides, not belonging and belonging. What does it feel like not to belong? What are some of the adjectives? Like, what does it feel like
Hmm.
not to belong?
It's a good question. I think it feels like um, you feel disconnected. Um, there could be a sense of um, uneasiness, of frustration, of lack of confidence in yourself. Um, and I said, remember the earlier part of the conversation that we talked about how we need to surround ourselves with people that can help you hit the reset button. And when you don't have that community around you, you don't have that ability to do that as easily.
Mhm.
So it can feel lonely. That's probably a good way of describing it, right? This sense of loneliness. Um, And so I think it is important to feel a sense of belonging, and whether that be belonging in the community in which I referred to, you can feel belonging with the people you work with. You can feel belonging with your family. You can feel a sense of belonging in just many different contexts. But you have to you have to be intentional about that, right? You have to be cognizant of that, because when you're cognizant of it, I I think you start to feel that sense of belonging because you've intentionally leaned into those respective communities. And I think there are multiple communities, right? And I just listed off a number of there. It's not just one community. There are communities, and sometimes the circles of those communities may never intersect. But
Totally.
that's okay because they each represent a different facet of your life. And then you just got to lean into that.
One of the things that I've been trying to be more intentional about, I'll just throw this out there for a second, is trying to find the times to cross pollinate. If that's the right, the different communities. And, maybe there is, a couple of my neighbor friends that I'm able to invite to, I'm just going to say my church community, for Christmas or whatever, something like that. That's a simple example. But trying to be intentional about interacting these communities to elevate their sense of belonging and community so it's just something that I try to reflect on. I'm not always great at it. I try to do it.
But it also what sparked the thought there when you mentioned that was when you do that, when you bring individuals from outside, from multiple communities, you're enriching the experiences of those interactions because they're inherently diverse.
Yes.
So those individuals who may associate with more individuals like them are now being mixed with or being exposed to other communities, and that just enriches the overall community. That is the very definition of diversity.
Oh, that's awesome. Now, in my experience, when I deliberately created my first community, the Marathon Girls, which you know about, when I deliberately created my first community and that sense of belonging, what I learned is that I get by giving. I could only get community by giving, by giving myself. So do you have an example or just a thought on a time that you got by giving?
Yeah, I think to me, one of the most important things to give is time. And time, the way I sort of frame this, time is the most important currency. And when I give that and intentionally give that to others, that's how you build meaningful relationships. And it's something that I've tried to do or be more conscious of. And it is about investing time to build relationship capital, right? Because when you do that, when you build up that bank with others, you also have the opportunity to draw from it as well when you need it. And it isn't just about giving time because you'll receive an outcome. It is about, because that just may continue to grow and grow and you may never need it. And that's okay because it's actually giving time to somebody else. So they're enriching their own sense of who they are. But to me, it's time. And so that then means that you have to be cognizant of what do you not do to gain time. And that's hard, right? We said it, you said it earlier at the outset, right? Life gets in the way.
Yeah.
And then, but you intentionally reached out to me and gave me your time and I gave my time and we connected, right? Or reconnected. So to me, that's the fundamental currency is time. And we have to create more of it and we have to give more of it. And when we do it, that's when we're able to build meaningful, sustainable relationships.
Thank you for joining me for our Choose and Become interview series. You could find this episode and others at trishkendall.com. Just go to trishkendall.com/choose-become-interview-series. Or if you have a question or just want to leave a comment, email me, trish@trishkendall.com.